It seems that every time you do an investigation, you find something out that it becomes front page news. This one I don't think will make TMZ, but this is a far more serious story about collusion in the ownership ranks. And I wanted to get you on immediately, A, because I'm so proud that you did this, but B, I'm not sure that you got the entire story. So I wanted to be of assistance if you're looking for it.
I would love not just the platform, the opportunity, but your critique or your illumination. Yes, all of it is, typically I loop you into things. And I did drop a breadcrumb for you in a phone call we had, although I didn't explain what the breadcrumb was directed towards. You no doubt remember that breadcrumb now. But this is one I've been like hoping to have in public, frankly. So have at it.
Well, again, I'm not criticizing you or your choice of guest at all. You had a story, you got a document. It's a 61-page document, which is a written result of a grievance, the type of grievance that gets filed across all sports almost every year. There are such grievances in baseball that I was a part of so many times during my career, I can't tell you, where there was an allegation by the union that there was collusion going on because there were players not being signed, including as recently as when the Boris players didn't get signed until really late, only a couple of years ago. And that is the knee-jerk reaction within a CBA, is when players are not being signed at the top level, to say, oh, collusion. And you fell into the trap. And the trap you fell into is thinking that when a arbitrator, and it's a single arbitrator, does a ruling where inside the ruling it says, and you talked about this on your show, that I'm not ruling there's collusion, but I am ruling there was the possibility of collusion. And then people run with that as though it's the greatest smoking gun of all time. Except, Pablo, I'd like you to just respond to this truism. There wasn't collusion, because if there had been collusion, they would have lost the grievance. And for a judge to say there could be collusion, but it doesn't meet all the standards of collusion, means there wasn't collusion.
Well, this is now your favorite topic, which is legalese. The judge used a standard in this case that was, I think, notable. It was a clear preponderance of evidence. I'm curious if you're familiar with that standard. To me, that was, of course, by implication, the highest possible standard, meaning, in this case, he could not prove, despite evidence arrayed in front of him, that the owners had acted at the direction of the NFL league office. But what is clear to me, and was clear to the arbitrator, Christopher Droney, retired federal judge, is that the league office was encouraging collusion, right? And so there is a bit of a can you be a little bit pregnant kind of a dynamic here, right? Like, can you encourage something from the top down in a meeting with a presentation with written directives that were all found during expedited discovery, which indicate with no uncertainty, here are the encouragements and the motives outlined, found in discovery from Roger Goodell and his general counsel, Jeff Pash, to the 32 owners at the league annual meetings at a session of the NFL Management Council, which itself, as Mike Florio, our guest, points out in the episode, has a collusive aspect to it. Like, why does this council exist? Why are they encouraging best business practices? Why do they have these meetings that are closed door in which they are directed by the league? Here's what you should consider doing as you go through your offseason. All of that being said, what the judge, the retired judge, the arbitrator said is, we could not prove that the owners acted upon that. Because again, in fairness, every team already has built-in incentives, right? They want to tamp down guarantees regardless. They want to compete with each other regardless. They want to do all of these things, which are also true. But what it is clear to me is in this case about collusion is that one standard was in fact met. The arbitrator cleared it. The other one, he did not feel comfortable saying they acted upon for reasons that I mentioned and beyond.
You know, of course, several things just to make sure you're clear. There is a far greater standard than preponderance. And you're lucky, it's called beyond a reasonable doubt. That's the top one that's used in criminal cases. And you always want to keep in mind that in civil cases, it's a far lower bar, but that's the first thing. Second one I want to mention, there's what was not in 18 years, not one owners meeting I ever went to, and I went to 4 a year for 18 years, never missed one. There wasn't one without a deck. that was shown to us talking about players' salaries and how stupid we were for signing players and how we ought to be smart and not sign and guarantee money to players over too many years because you're going to get screwed because they're going to get hurt or they're going to stink. There wasn't one meeting. There wasn't one meeting where the head of labor, Rob Manford under Bud Selig, Dan Hallam under Rob Manford, didn't say, but you can all do whatever you want, and we encourage you to do whatever you want. Definitionally, when you say that, collusion, it goes the way of Kaiser Soze. And you blew over that in your episode because that's a huge factor, is that when you are told by the league that, hey, operate however you want, but here's the facts. That happens in baseball, basketball, football. It's not collusion.
I would love for that to be transcribed and submitted in a courtroom at some point. Coca, if you could transcribe that for us, I think it's very useful as an exhibit. Look, in all seriousness, I understand what you're saying. I think what was specific here and why this rose to the level of a clear preponderance of evidence for the arbitrator, right, is that this was all in a very compressed timeline that made this not merely a general guidance, but a very specific action in response to something that Roger Goodell is caught saying in Discovery, which is because Deshaun Watson, remember, this is March 2022, Deshaun Watson gets the first fully guaranteed deal of that magnitude in the history of the NFL. And the reaction around the league was, as you impute, quite predictable, right? Like, how would the Browns, why would they do this? This is dumb. Roger Goodell takes it upon himself alongside Jeff Pash to email each other as per the document saying, we cannot risk this. If we let this rope go, it'll be hard to undo it. It is something that we need to take seriously right now. And so they go into their presentation slides and they change the text to accurately and specifically reflect an action in response to that specific thing, at which point there is a directive, at which point all of these things are outlined in the document. So what I'm saying is it's not merely a general guidance. Guarantees are bad, have less of them, but do whatever you want. It is, in this case, undeniably, as a matter of English language, and now an arbitrator's ruling in this specific way, collusive. That
Hold on.
everything,
Wait. Why is that collusive?
because you are actually encouraging from the top down competitors to all join in an agreement, a de facto consensus. David, that is what
That's not what happened. What happened is there's a deal that gets signed every day. A deal gets signed that is so irrational and so ridiculous that the league gets together and sends a memo out or talks to you in a meeting and says, this is idiotic. Don't do this. You will live to regret this deal. And then when the deal turns out to be bad, you meet with the owners again and you do a told you so slide, which is, sure, we told you this was going to be bad and it was bad. Let us help you not make that mistake again. That's not collusion. That's telling your franchisees, your franchises, how to operate within the constraints of a collective bargaining agreement to save them from themselves.
I believe that you are taking a view of what collusion is that is extraordinarily generous towards the people who would like to not be legally liable for what the arbitrator found them to be actually. Yeah, I won't use the word
They
guilty.
weren't found liable for anything, though.
Oh, no, but they met the standard of tried to do it. What he could not prove is that the teams listened. And all of this, by the way, just because I want to get back to what you're saying on the front end, right? Because I'm glad we're having this conversation. It's a great one. So the back end of it, in which case the arbitrator did not find behavior that rose to the standard of collusion, right? I also want to point out that in this document, there are text messages between owners who are congratulating each other and saying explicitly, congratulations on this deal. And the response back, this is the Chargers owner and the Cardinals owner. Congratulations on the Kyler Murray deal. The guarantees are low. This is going to help us on our next contract. Thank you for doing it. And they're both very clearly congratulating each other for helping each other in the marketplace, right?
That's a Tuesday. You do
But
that
my
all the time. I would call other team presidents and be like, I can't believe you screwed me by settling with your ARB guy. Now we're absolutely up against it with our guy. Or when you sign a shortstop, why did you give him 8 years? Now I'm going to have to go to eight
This is,
years, you
but David,
bastard.
why I love you so much and why I'm so glad to have this conversation is that you must now, your audience must now understand that your level of disclosure and clarity around what happens behind the scenes, no one else will willingly say this. You're the only one, right? So that's just the key context here is that you're the most useful ally to the ownership class because you're saying, whoa, 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 this is actually quite normal. This is not like this is a Tuesday. This is not some Haley's Comet situation. But also, they would never otherwise want the reason you're their greatest enemy is that they would never admit that themselves. Because what that indicates actually is that the very thing that players have been unable to establish in public, which is that the owners talk about this like this, the places that you can go for that confirmation are now two. You go to us on Pablo Torre Finds Out, the new episode, and you go to Nothing Personal with David Samson. No one else has this level of disclosure around this is how it is backstage. Now, the question of is this collusion or not? Look, you can disagree with the arbitrator's first leg of that finding. I would not. I would say that the definition of collusion when it comes to what does it mean practically speaking, it means that competitive entities are cooperating with each other to suppress the amount of money that players may otherwise get in an ostensibly free market-ish scenario. And I say ish, knowing that, of course, this is sports. There are all sorts of regulations they agree to, ish, right? I would say
The
that
big ish.
feels, it's a big ish. It's a big ish. Good alternate name for your program. It's a big ish. That is collusive to me. And I think to any normal person who's like, what does this mean? What does this word even mean? It means the players, Dave, and this is the bigger context of the story, right? So it's what's so funny also this is a story in which neither the union nor the league wanted this document out. So this is,
Hmm.
by the way, for all of the sparring we're doing now, it is not me being on the cause of the union. I would say, if you listen to this story, the party that's even most desperate to not have you know any of this is the union, which is why this story is a real mind bleep, right? Here you have a thing, an exhibit you would want anybody to know about how owners behave. It will help evolve your thinking, as David has outlined and tries to outline on his show every day. But because union leadership themselves were conflicted because they got caught in discovery trashing Russell Wilson, right, for being the guy who helped undermine their cause. And oops, the arbitrator found it wasn't Russell Wilson, it was the owners always collaborating. They looked terrible. And so it's just one of those stories where everybody looks terrible,
There's
which
tons
I
of different
love.
levels. But again, another Tuesday and a little bit of ish is that when players sign what the union perceives to be under market deals, because they want to take care of their family or they want to do something, they get crushed by the union because the view is that you are hurting your fellow players by taking a below market deal. And what the union will do and agents will do is they will call when there's an over market deal and they'll say, man, you're really in trouble now. We got this owner who's so
Oh,
desperate. He's a dying octogenarian. He overpaid that first baseman. Guess what? Your first baseman, you just got brought up. Good luck to you. Both
and by the
sides
way,
happen.
by the way, and look, the context here is key, right? This is the Cleveland Browns paying Deshaun Watson, right? Like they were not popular already on its face because of that deal, as you say, with other owners. That's also parallel true here. I just want to quote briefly and then get to one more point. So, just for people who are not familiar with the episode, what the arbitrator found was, quote, there is little question that the NFL Management Council, with the blessing of the commissioner, encouraged the 32 NFL clubs to reduce guarantees in veterans contracts at the March 2022 annual owners meeting, end quote. And it goes on. So that's what I'm saying when I'm referring to all of that stuff. I just want to get the legalese right.
That's all
But
true.
what you're saying, by the way, is interesting because one of my big takeaways, like what did I find out in this episode? is that the players are so desperate as a union for the level of solidarity that the owners have. So the idea of like what is collusion? To me, collusion is the funhouse mirror version of solidarity. It is cooperation. It is, of course, people trying to band together in a collective self-interest. The owners are just so much better at it for reasons we could spend hours talking about, of course. They own the teams forever. Of course, there are
Hmm?
fewer of them, blah, 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 blah. But the point is
They're all more
that
alike.
they're more alike, right? They are not, well, there are classes of wealth, but not as vast as the difference between a star quarterback and a practice squad guy. All of this is true and fascinating. But union reps, when they see how the owners behave, by the way, they had not seen this document. Kyler Murray had not seen this document. Lamar Jackson had not seen this document. Russell Wilson had not seen this document. DeMaurice Smith had not seen this document.
But Pablo, what does that matter? You brought that up on your
But here's
episode.
here's why it matters. Here's why it matters. It's because what you have seen behind closed doors, why your show is valuable, is that you are willing to say it. No one else is. So these protagonists, in this case, about them, about their futures, their money, their contracts, their union, they were in the dark. And what is relegated to the dustbin of gossip and motivated slander is actually documented through the most terrifying two words, David, in the legal world: expedited discovery. This is not David Samson's word against the union's word. It's not anything. This is in print. And that's where it elevates to, oh, it probably would have been nice for them to see it.
Pablo, you said expedited discovery a lot on your show and how big a deal that is. I assume that you spoke off with a bunch of lawyers who talked to you about discovery and what an absolute pain in the neck it is. And you said on the show, and I smiled, having to go through all these documents where you do a document dump and you count on a bunch of lawyers looking for a smoking gun. You know that the way it works now, which is a dream, not like the old bait stamp days of my early legal life and paralegal life before I started law school. It's electronic discovery for the most part, where you upload documents into a system and then you do a word search like collusion or like Watson. Like, don't show me emails about whether or not John Gruden is, a misogynist and racist. Don't care. Show me an email that has the word, Watson, collusion, and maybe just for fun, if you have all the emails, you put Jerry Jones in there as a word to
He
search.
came up.
But you do have to charge, of course. You pay depending on the words. And what expedited discovery means is that there is a trial coming soon, a hearing coming soon, and we can't do the normal bullcrap that is together with discovery, which is there's motions back and forth. I don't want to show that. You got to bring it to the judge. The judge has to read it. The judge has to look at both sides and say, all right, why is this relevant? All right, I will redact the following 50 words. Next document. You can spend years crushing your opponent with discovery issues like that,
Yes.
run them out of business, and win your lawsuit that way because they run out of money. What expedited discovery is, just give it all. We'll talk about it during the hearing, hand over everything you got, and there's no jury, there's no, prejudice, anything, because it's just me. So when something comes up, if I think it shouldn't be there, we'll eliminate it, but just dump it all in the document. That's what expedited discovery is.
Oh, it's great. And by the way, it does make me laugh, right? So my wife was, before she went on to other things, was a paralegal at an enormous law firm. Like, all of this I've seen from like all of the levels, from the lawyers, now from the judges, from the paralegals. Part of what's funny to me is that sometimes this is where like authentic typos still make you want to dive through all of them because, ooh, they spelled collusion with like one L. Missed that one, right? Took an L because they missed an L is like an actual reality of like the word search. AI, when we say AI is replacing lawyers, like a big part of it is just like literally you prompt it with that. That's one part of it. But look, the part of this that makes it, it's so part of why I love talking to you, right? Is that I sometimes feel like the guy in The Big Short who turns to his friend and he's like, "Why are they bragging about this?" Oh no, sorry, excuse me. I spoiled my own punchline. Why are
Terrible.
they confessing? He's not confessing, he's bragging, right? Like that's the part of your honesty, part of your like radical honesty about ownership is how atypical it is. And so what I love to do when I imagine expedited discovery is imagine these owners who are like, look, the reason why no one wanted this out is obvious when you hear the whole thing, but for the owners, it's obvious intuitively. It's like they don't, you're at a certain point,
But
you're rich in order to avoid these problems, avoid anybody
Pablo, do you
knowing.
think that companies, it's only sports teams? Do you know that all of the large companies that some of which you invest in, some of whom are sponsors, they're doing in their mind expedited internal discovery every day? There are procedures in place that are written down of when you have to go through your emails, when you have to delete emails, because you're always assuming, wait a minute, what would happen if this were subject to discovery? And it doesn't mean you've broken a law. It means that you're actually being prudent, business prudent. I'm not bragging. I'm not confessing. I'm just trying to give my audience and yours some truth about what actually happens behind the scenes. That's all.
Oh, no, no. And look, I believe that you are not personally responsible for the mortgage crisis. If that was, an
Thank
interpretation
you.
someone had out
If
there,
you were
you are not.
Levitard, I would be.
Yeah, well, listen, that's just one difference between me and Dan, is that I'm not trying to actually imprison you. One thing though that I do want people to understand, where we clearly agree, is that the sunlight, as sunlight is like blaring into my, it's like 100 zillion degrees in New York right now, and I'm sitting in the sun. The sunlight here is what I lust for, right?
Me too.
So what you are describing, which is this is merely the tip of an iceberg. If you are scandalized by this, just know that this is merely the tip of the iceberg of the reality hiding underneath the surface, is also my view. Like my view is not they got caught the one time and here it is and wow. It's this is what happens if you were to put everybody through expedited discovery. You would see how much people put stuff in writing. I mean, David, the part that's very funny to me, and I wonder if this is a generational thing, right? At a certain point, you stop putting it in writing. Like, obviously, that's the solution here, right? It's like, oh no, expedited discovery gets all of our documents. Solution, don't put it in document form.
It's very common where you say, by the way, let's call, and then you do not put this in writing. That doesn't mean you're doing anything illegal. That is standard operating procedure for people within companies. I personally love the calls. I don't love
I
text.
know
I
you do.
teach everybody, that texts live forever. You can delete, you can be on WhatsApp, you can be on Signal, be wherever you want. Someone's got it. Here's what they don't have. When I see you in person and talk to you with the trench coat on, no one's got that unless I'm wearing a wire. So I'm a big believer of talking, and you and I manifest that by talking all the time.
And now, I mean, only now do I realize why it is beyond you wanting to hear the sound of your voice and mine. Why you do that? It tracks. It does track. One other thing that's very funny to me about this, by the way, is how scared lots of people are to discuss it. You have dived in even with your objections and your clarifications, more clarifications than anything, which I legitimately like. This is why I love talking to you. But people are afraid. They don't, a story like this that has tonnage, 61 pages, rich people are mad that they showed up in documents. The league is implicated. The union is implicated. Broadcast partners, they're afraid. They're afraid. And what I would just say is that part of my goal and yours is to make it so that even if something feels arcane and legalese and all of this, you still get to the core of it, which is, as always, to me, if I were to choose one word, incentives. It is human psychology. What is everybody incentivized by their own self-interest to do? Follow that. And you'll get to some fascinating stories that are relatable, whether or not you know a single thing about expedited discovery or union annual meetings
Or
or
collusion.
collusion or collusion. Exactly right.
That's why Pablo Torre Finds Out wins awards. Thank you. I'm going to see you later. I think we're doing another show today,
Yeah,
which
I'm,
makes
I'm
me
waiting for
happy.
you. I'm waiting for you in the sun.
I will finish this show and I will come to you, but you're live right now. And now you're gone, and I'm going to answer another question from someone about something else. But thank you for the time. Bye, Pablo.